Welcome, everyone, to our curated conversation with Roberto Benavidez. Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone to make sure that your phones are in silent mode. And yes, food and drink are welcome in the auditorium. In 1854, Chief Seattle said, "Every part of this soil is sacred in the estimation of my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and grove has been hallowed by some sad or happy event in days long vanished." We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is within the ancestral territory of the Suquamish people of clear salt water, Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Suquamish live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea, as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Suquamish live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. Thank you for listening. And thank you to all of our sponsors. Oops. There we go. Oh, I think I'm setting it down on the little trackpad. That's what's happening. Okay. All right. Tonight's event is also sponsored by BIMA members. Members allow us to showcase wonderful artists like Roberto who inspire wonder and curiosity. Members also support field trips that bring over 1,000 children to BIMA each school year, 250 events and 24 original exhibitions that speak to the community each year, and keeping our museum free and open every day. Members get 10% discounts in the BIMA Bistro, museum store, and ticketed events, along with exclusive members-only events like parties and movies. And if you're not a member, please check out our website or come in again someday soon, and the front desk staff can sign you up personally. We have so many cultural offerings this month of November. We're going to screen the annual Frank Buxton Silent Film Festival on the 15th and 16th. We'll also have a special screening of the film Exhibiting Forgiveness, about the life of artist and activist Titus Kaphar, with composer Jarek Bischoff on November 17th. Please note for that one, this BIMA event will be presented at the Linwood Theater, the historic Linwood Theater, not here in the auditorium. We'll also have an evening of art and melody, catching up with the celebrated Seattle artist Barbara Earl Thomas, featuring cellist Gretchen Janover on the 22nd. We have 4 smart films scheduled as well, starting with The Black Stallion tomorrow night. And last, but certainly not least, on November 23rd, we'll have the Exhibiting Artists Talk 50 Years, The Art of Nancy Mee and Dennis Evans. With an introduction by Chief Curator Greg Robinson, this presentation will cover Dennis and Nancy's long and fascinating artistic journey. Audience Q&A and a special reception will follow. Dennis Evans and Nancy Mee's work is viewable in the upstairs galleries, and downstairs we have our iconic Día de los Muertos and Beyond exhibition with stunning paintings and sculpture by Latine artists, combined with the work of regional school children, as well as a community ofrenda honoring loved ones who have passed away. And now for this evening's program. With work in 2 simultaneous exhibitions at BIMA, Roberto Benavidez is a sculptor specializing in the piñata form. Commissioned by Cynthia Sears, his Illuminated Passport is part of the Crossing the Line, the Passport Reimagined, and his piñatas are featured in our annual Día de los Muertos exhibition. He will discuss his Illuminated Passport and how it follows the historical path of the piñata in whimsical and playful ways. Woven into his work are subtle references to sin, sexuality, and icons from each country that contributed to the piñata's evolution. The mashup of the medieval aesthetic with piñata materials is intended to reflect and celebrate his mixed-race background and the piñata's multicultural history. Let's welcome Roberto.
Well, I think you said enough, Jenna. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, BIMA, for having me here, and of course to Catherine and Cynthia for including me in the shows. Where to start? So I guess we'll start at the beginning. So this is my family. I grew up in a fairly large family in South Texas. That's me. Middle child. Growing up in South Texas, art really wasn't a thing. I did have exposure to some art, but in my mind, art was a time period. Like every artist that I knew was dead, so I thought it was something from the past. So it wasn't anything that I really thought you could pursue. Even though I did have some family members who were highly artistic and very inspiring, it wasn't anything that I thought that I could really do. So I ended up pursuing acting. But before I get into that, I just want to say, like, we're all from a time and place, and I grew up in the 80s, closeted, mixed race, and under the thumb of Catholicism. So those are the things that really shaped me. So you'll probably see some of that reflected in what I've decided to include in my work. Let's see. Yeah, so I pursued acting. It was a creative outlet, and it was something that I had quite a bit of success at. So I got my degree in acting, and I found that with acting, you don't have many jobs, especially in Texas. It's not a huge market. So if you're not proactive and learning on your own, you're not really doing a lot. And I really wasn't. I really liked acting, but it wasn't something that was truly like what I really wanted to do or that really grabbed my inner self. But what I did every day, and it took a while for me to realize this, I sculpted every day. And this is just an example of kind of the stuff that I was doing at that time. These were fun gals, mushroom people. Fun gals and fun guys. So I decided, since I was doing this every day, it's what I was going to pursue. So I quit acting, moved to LA. I know that's contradictory. But all of my friends were in LA, so that's what took me to LA. But once I got there, I just started taking classes. And I'll show you the back of these. I included that as well. Very psychedelic. So in taking classes at Pasadena City College, I would just take one class per semester at night, and I had a full-time job. So it was a few years where I just took some basic classes, and I ended up landing in the sculpture department, where I started making bronze pieces. These first two are abstract figurative. They're taken from photographs, where the person is kind of blown out, kind of the background. This is from a photo that I took of a friend's wedding, and this person it was a wedding on the beach, and he was just gawking, so this one's called a gawker. And then this one's from an image that I just found somewhere, that it was somebody in a shower, and I just built that out. And then I also really was interested in just plain abstraction. Like I really like taking organic forms and kind of bringing them to life. So that's just a couple of those. But you can only take classes so many times. And it was kind of my studio away from home. And once I couldn't take any more classes, I kind of felt like I was financially separated from my work because bronze is so expensive to produce. Like with these pieces, I probably spent a total of $10 on each one total. So it was very affordable when I was in class, but once I was gone, like there were many years where I was trying to figure out like how to get my practice started. And then I stumbled upon this image. So this is a piñata that somebody made for their kid's birthday. If you want, the website is still up. It's called piñataboy.com. And on the website, he was like, people always ask me if I want to make these for others, but nobody would ever pay for a piñata. So I decided to challenge that. And the very first piñata I made, is this here, this sugar skull. And I found that I just really loved the process, but it was also so accessible. You know, the materials are very cheap. I was literally pulling most things from recycling or the pantry. The glue I used was made with wheat paste. I used newspaper, and then I used balloons as the beginning of all of my forms. This is a more recent photo, so that's just an array of more recent works, but I just wanted to show you the skull. So Then the question was, what is your body of work going to be? So I just started with the simple question of, what do you want for your birthday? Like, what piñata do you want at your birthday? And I landed on Hieronymus Bosch. Very fantastical creatures. It was also going so far back that there were no copyright issues. And I've made quite a few. I've made this cat and some of these birds, and this bird here. But like, I would probably never get through all of these creatures. And then, well, maybe I should go into something else. So I think I'm going to tell you just a little bit about the history of the piñata now. I didn't really know much about it. And when I started looking into it, I found that this medium is actually very multicultural. This is the theory, or this is what's believed to be the history of the piñata, is Marco Polo saw a ritual in China where they broke open an ox and seeds spilled out, and it was supposed to ensure a good harvest. And he took that back to Italy, and instead of an ox, it was just a clay pot that they would break open with a sword in celebrations. And then it went to Spain, where it took a more religious connotation, and it was usually a celebration of Lent, where you'd find a piñata. But these piñatas, I don't think they were hung. The depictions, they were usually on the ground and just broken open. And the way it came to the Americas is missionaries, when they came to the Americas, saw the indigenous people had this ritual where they would fill a clay pot with treats and adorn it with feathers and break it open for one of their gods. And they decided to create the 7-star piñata because it was something that was familiar to the indigenous people, and they wanted to recruit them to Catholicism. So it became a teaching tool too. The 7 points represented the 7 deadly sins, which I did not know. I thought that was pretty interesting. But the tying into the Catholicism and this multiculturalism, like, it really felt closer to me. Not that I consider myself Catholic, I was forced Catholic. But, regardless, it was part of my upbringing, and it's what's inside me. Let's see. So when I was researching Bosch, I started seeing these other images. So these are creatures from illuminated manuscripts. And both illuminated manuscripts and Hieronymus Bosch have this underlying religious theme to them, which I thought was fun to use them as a source to kind of tie it back to the star piñata and the sin aspect. And being a gay man, and in Catholicism, sin was ever present, so it's very close to me. So I'm just going to show you a few of the pieces that I've made from these. So this, believe it or not, is a crocodile, a medieval depiction of a crocodile. And this creature is a hydrus. So what I really try to do is mash up these things. Just being a mixed race person, I wanted to really emphasize the mixing of the piñata with this Western imagery. So in this one, I decided to make the hydrus the step coloring that used pretty typical with piñatas. And the story is that the hydrus entices the crocodile to eat it, and then the hydrus eats its way out. So for me, this was kind of like Western culture consuming Mexican culture, and it's finding its way out. So this is another medieval creature. And one thing you'll notice about these first two is they're very graphic in nature. There's the dots. And the thing I changed on this, and again, I always try to mash up or bring something modern in. I don't know what he was eating in the original depiction, but I changed it to a candy, typical for piñatas. And then Bosch, I went more of a painterly feel. I really wanted to capture the painterly feel of Bosch, so the fringe is a lot more painterly. And in the painting, this bird just has a red berry on its beak, so I just changed it to a 7-star piñata, 7-pointed star piñata. And this is a more recent one. So this one has a little more than just changing it to a star piñata. Because of his position, I decided to make the points go through his hands. And since his foot is up, it also goes through his foot. So this one's called stigmata piñata. And then I just want to walk you through a little bit of my process when it comes to sculpting. This is a basilisk and weasel. So a basilisk is a creature, according to medieval lore, that can kill you just with the sound of its hiss. Very deadly creature, and the only thing that can kill it is a weasel. Just a little backstory on that. So this is the beginning of a sculpture. This is actually just a big balloon that I paper mache'd until it was a solid form. Then I used paperboard, like Bristol board, and tape to build out the form, and then just used balloons and tape to create the shape that I wanted. And then here it is again. I've refined the tail a little bit so it's tapered, added some wire to it, and then added legs with wire and paperboard as well. And that's the finished product. I'll get into the fringe a little bit later, but I just thought you'd be interested to see the creation of the piece. So something else I wanted to do, being mixed race, I really wanted to push this idea of hybridity. And instead of just incorporating a piñata motif, I wanted to literally have a hybrid piñata and manuscript creature. So this is from my Illuminated Hybrid series. Cynthia has quite a few of those, and one is in the Passport show. So it's either a piñata head and a manuscript body, or a piñata body and a manuscript head. So this is an example of the head being the manuscript, from the manuscript, and the body being a typical piñata motif. And then this is actually commissioned. I just put this in here because I like these. This is one where I really played with it. I kind of made these people look like the person who commissioned them, their kids, and then kind of switched up some of the features to have some tie between, I changed these legs to bird legs to kind of tie to that, and this fringe technique kind of ties it all together, and then colors tie them together. So then birds. So birds are a big part of my practice. I was approached pretty early on when I started posting my Bosch birds by birders. They really love their birds, and they're willing to pay money for birds. So that's kind of how I made my money, was making birds for birders. And the more I made them, the more I researched birds or learned more about birds. I started to come up with more conceptual bodies of work with birds. So this is the beginning of my birder series. So birder spelled B-I-R-D-R, no E. So it's a take on Grindr, the gay hookup app. So it just consists of same-sex coupling of birds. And for those that don't know, birds can be sexually dimorphic, meaning the male and the female will look different plumage. So what I like about this series is it's kind of a subtle coupling. Not many people will know that that's what they're looking at. So this is actually two male cardinals feeding one another, and if you know birds, that's part of their courting ritual. And then this one is a subset of my birder series called Comedores de Huevos, which in Spanish means egg eaters, but huevos also means something else in Spanish. And so this is a series where it's just male birds consuming eggs, which they typically do. And this was the very first one that I made. This one is from a Audubon vignette. So in the original vignette, there is a male least bittern, I think is this bird, and a female and a chick. And they're looking at this snail on a piece of grass. So I got rid of the chick, changed the female to a male, so it's two males. And the idea behind this was from an old movie with Tony Curtis and Laurence Olivier. I don't remember the name of the movie, but it's a scene where Tony Curtis is Laurence Olivier's body servant and is washing him. And Laurence Olivier's character asks him if he prefers snails or oysters. And it's supposed to be a question about sexuality, snail being male, oyster being female. And Spartacus, yes, Spartacus. And Tony Curtis replies he likes oysters, and Laurence Olivier's character says he likes both. So it's kind of a, come on. So that's what inspired me to take this vignette and kind of add those elements to it. So I added this oyster that's at their feet, like readily available to eat, but they're only interested in the snail that's out of reach. But it's also just such a nice vignette. So this is just another example of the process. So I mainly made these bodies just with Bristol board, and then these are like just, animal balloons. Okay, so now this is a gynandromorph bird. I just need to get a sip of water. So I recently found out about these birds. So birds, arthropods, crustaceans, like those groups, when they have this genetic mutation where they're both male and female, the way they display is literally split down the middle. Female on one side, male on the other. And as a sculptor, I always want to make both male and female, so in a practical sense, it was a way for me to make both at one time. But it was also a way just to depict what happens in nature, but also mirrors some of the political things going on today when it comes to non-binary. And it really does make me think about being mixed race. And I know right now there's a discussion about non-binary when it comes to gender, but it is difficult being mixed race and taking on the identity of just being mixed race and not picking a side. So I'm hoping that conversation starts to happen more. I would recommend an Instagram account called Mixed in America. It's an account where people of mixed race submit their stories or their experiences, and there are all these shared experiences with mixed race people not fitting into one group or the other. So I feel like it kind of parallels gynandromorph as well. So these are some of the gynandromorphs I've made. This is a Phainopepla, which I call a goth cardinal, because it's black with a crest and a red eye. So the male is completely black, but the female is gray. And this is a tanager. The male is red and the female's green. And then this is my very first artist book. This is butterflies. And seemingly, like when you look at it, you might think like that this is the butterfly here, one butterfly. But actually, this is one butterfly. And you can tell by the segmentation when you open it. So it's like hidden gynandromorphs, because if you were just to look at it, you would think they were regular butterflies, but they're not. And then I also have what I call a half-breed series. So this is mixing birds together. This is a scarlet ibis and a glossy ibis. And this is a hummingbird and a Kia parrot. So this was actually a commission for one of my collectors who's from New Zealand, but now lives in Santa Barbara. So he wanted a hummingbird, so I just decided to bring his childhood in as well. So it's the body of a hummingbird, but the plumage of a Kia parrot. And then I just added these tails because he wanted tails. So now I'm circling back to the fringing. So all of my fringe is hand cut, and whenever I think about fringing, all I think about is just the movement of color and creating a vibrancy in color. So I just cut these into strips, and when I apply them, I literally cut individual pieces off of these strips and just apply them one by one. But this is just to show you how you can shift color around. Like these are all very vibrant colors with just white on the top, and it's nice that you can really play with color that way. And I'm coming back actually, before I actually started making Bosch, I really like to practice things before. I conceptualized Bosch works in 2009, but didn't start until 2012. What I was working on in between then were these, what I call piñata paintings. And it was just a way for me to explore materials and color and combinations. And this is from my Piñathco series. So they're based on Rothko's color field paintings. And I could have made a swatch book. I took a painting class where you mix colors into a book that you use as a reference. Very utilitarian, but there's so much work in this. I was like, I do not want to make something that's utilitarian. If I do this, I'm going to make a body of work. So this was what I really worked on for a year or so. And then I got into actual depictions of what you would see in regular paintings. And this is just to show you just how much fringe has to be made. It's quite crazy the work that goes into these. Sometimes I question myself. It really, like, I don't time anything because I'm afraid of how long it actually takes. But this was a commission by LA Metro. They commission artists to do posters for buses and their rails, and I did this for my neighborhood, and I got it. So, one thing that I did notice about this, though, is just like with Bosch and Illuminated Creatures, one being more painterly and one being more graphic, I realized when I was doing this, like, all the natural elements, apart from the moon, are very painterly, and everything that's human-made is very graphic, which I just thought was interesting. But normally my paintings are more about nostalgia. So this is a depiction of, or it's called Caliche Roads, and in South Texas, most of the ranch roads are made with this chalk. It's a caliche. It's just a white chalky thing. They have big caliche pits that they mine, and it gets your car so dusty. But it's quite visual. This is a depiction of the hills in LA, where I live now. Also has a moon. If you'll see, like, all of my paintings that have a sky have a moon, because I just like the moon. And then this is a depiction of an island that my husband and I used to visit quite frequently. We haven't in a while. It's Santa Rosa Island off of Ventura, California. And every time we're there, we're usually there around his birthday, and we always get a full moon rising, and it's always so dramatic. It seems so much bigger out there. And then I think this is, I can't remember what there are two, there was some celestial thing happening in a different part of the sky, so I moved it to this part of the sky because I wanted it in it. So then I kind of have gone back to exploring abstract works. I was very inspired by Ken Price. He's a ceramicist. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he makes these very organic, bulbous pieces, or did, he passed away. And he would paint them like different colors, different layers, and when he was done, he would sand his piece, and the little raised points, you would see these circles of color that are underneath, so it created this vibrancy, and I kind of wanted to mimic that, but I had to do it with my own technique. So these are, if you remember the strips that I made, these are just like 5 colors that are glued together, and instead of sanding, I just cut away for the colors to show underneath. And like I said, I like to practice, so before I really got into my abstract series, I did these, what are called balloon pots, my homage to the balloon, which is the base for all of my work, where I just made these shapes, these simple shapes, into pots and just explored color. It was really just about that. And then I started my abstract work. So this is actually just, in my mind, just stacked piñatas, and they literally are just stacked portions of piñata, if not whole. I'm sorry, balloons, stacked balloons, what am I thinking? Stacked balloons. But it's still that same cutting away to show some color underneath, just to create this like overall vibrancy. But at the same time, I really, whenever I create these organic or these abstract pieces, I really want them to seem alive. And when I made this piece, to me, it kind of reminded me of the Gawker, which I really wasn't thinking about it as I was making it, but in the end, it kind of resembled that. And that's just a detail where you can see the colors underneath. So the only thing that's different is the color on top. All the colors underneath are the same. This is another example. This, you can still see the balloon shapes, but I've kind of gone back. If you remember the other abstract works I had in bronze, this is using the same source material, which were, well, I can just show you. So when I worked a corporate job for very long time, I was very bored a lot, and I would make these like when I was on the phone, I would just make these shapes, just not really thinking about it. I kind of made them as if I was drawing or writing in cursive and kind of just connecting it all. So I was literally thinking, what's your signature? Like kind of creating shapes using the way I write. And then I just, this actually I've had for probably 14 years. That's one that I wanted to turn into a bronze piece, but it's just been sitting there, so I decided to make them into piñatas since that's what medium I work in now. And lastly, so this is another series that I've been working on. There was a curator that introduced me to grotesque imagery, which are these fantastical hybrid animals found on pottery that were excavated from Italian grottos. And instead of, they're glazed, so all of the creatures are glazed. And I could have taken the approach of being more painterly, but I wanted to bring in that technique of just taking a color palette and creating the fringe like I used on my pot and on my abstract. So, which was, I didn't intend this, and sometimes I learn a lot from people talking about my work. And I had this curator from the Getty who was looking at this work, and she was like, "Oh, it's interesting that you are being ornamental with your fringe on these pieces when the source material is very ornamental." So I did something without even thinking about it. That's the back, and in the background, that's just another illuminated piece. And this is an example. I don't know if these are necessarily considered grotesque works, but it's in line with that. I was in Italy this past fall, and the Uffizi, we went there, and there's this long hallway that leads to all the galleries, and everybody's just lined up in this hallway to just get into the galleries, see the Botticellis. But there's this painted ceiling of, I don't know if it's painted or fresco or what it is, but there are all these animals. So I was just walking down the hallway just taking pictures of the ceiling, and people just thought I was crazy. There was, it's that whole thing of somebody doing something and everybody looking up and like not knowing what the hell I'm doing. That's just another example. So these are just some future works. I just wanted to throw those in. So now we get to the piece that's here in the Passport show. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted to make. Artist books are new to me, and it takes a while. Like, I'm slow. But once I get there, I feel like I can really get into it. So what I decided was I would just make a passport for one of my pieces, like a historical passport, just to show the path of the piñata that I talked about earlier. So this is the passport here. And to me, it kind of felt like this strap that goes across reminded me of a catechism book, like when you were in catechism. And I wanted it to take a shape. So it's an accordion artist book, and I wanted it to take the shape of a star piñata, just to reference that. So it's 7-pointed star piñata when it's laid out. And on the inside, each point has a different color to represent the rainbow, LGBTQ. And so I did a little portrait. And the way I did the portrait is I literally just printed off the picture I took of my piece, cut it out, and then just laid the crepe paper on top, and then created this little goatskin parchment medallion for it to sit on. And then I was just a little playful with the description. It's basically language taken from the US passport, but instead of going to other countries, it's a passport to parties and celebrations. So this is my depiction of its time in China. So there's the reference to the oxen here and the seed. And it was kind of nice coming up with these. I kept them all the same. I just wanted them to be all the same. But, on your passport stamps, there's usually a plane. I decided to put some galleons in there. So then it gets to Italy, and here's the sword I was talking about. And in Italy, they think that's where piñata got its name. So the name for a small clay pot in Italy is pignata. So it's either from that, or they think it might have also been derived from the Latin word for pine cone, which is piña. I don't know if they decided what it is, and that may change, who knows. So then there's Spain. Spain is the one that went more religious with it. And I really like, I wanted to, the reason I chose this also is I've always wanted to work with parchment, having illuminated manuscripts as my source material for one of my series. And one of the things you find in illuminated manuscripts are called manacles. So that's what this hand here. So they usually, somebody will draw one of those in to point out a particular phrase or something that they think might be important. And this manacle is from this particular hybrid creature. He's just pointing out the bull he wants to be most associated with. Just trying to keep it playful. And so this is the Mexico panel. And this, visually, it's my favorite panel. But it's just my, like, fantasy view of what those pots with the feathers on it would look like. These are supposed to be quetzal feathers. And then the star piñata here. And then I kind of shifted. So initially it was like the history of the piñata, and then it comes to the history of me. So this is Texas, where I'm from, and, you know, Longhorn and candy, which is most associated with piñatas, or at least when I was a kid. And then it ends in California, because that's where I am. And I left that side blank because who knows where the piñata will end up or what it's going to be. But I will say this. So all this being said, I really do work for my pieces to stand on their own. If people don't get that it's about being gay or any race, that's fine. But it doesn't make it any less. Just like if somebody doesn't know I'm gay or doesn't know I'm mixed race, it doesn't make me any less of any of that. So that's it. Thank you. Hopefully you'll have questions.
I do.
Okay.
Okay, so for those of us who are not current on our medieval history, can you say more about that source material, the illuminated manuscript? Like, what were they? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, so these were usually a book that was owned by somebody wealthy, and they would get them illuminated by scribes. And I think it was a status thing. So I think that, you know, they use actual silver and gold gilding. And I don't know a lot about them. I actually don't like to go too deep into something necessarily. Like, I really just want to extract these hybrid creatures. It's more about paralleling it to my experience as a mixed race person.
And the piece that had the full moon over the island.
Uh-huh.
So you'd been showing us the kind of fringed cut paper. And
Yeah.
I saw some of that in there, but how did you make the water?
Yeah, so I usually just use crepe paper, but I also have tried to incorporate, what do you call it, mylar, those mylar ribbon streamers. They're incredibly difficult material. No glue sticks to it. And any glue that does melts it. So the only thing that works is double stick tape. And it's very hard to get it to lay flat to a form without it pulling up. The tensile strength just kind of pulls it off. So I'm able to incorporate it into my paintings. So yeah, I use that for the water just to give it more of a night reflection.
So you painted on the mylar?
No,
No,
it was just black mylar.
Okay.
Yeah, black and silver and gold mylar I think I used for the water. Yeah, it was fun. It was actually fun to use new material and it actually work and not peel up. Yeah.
Okay, so for this commission, I was wondering, for the Passport Reamended, what did this commission kind of change in you, or how did it, like what seeds did it plant?
Yeah, you know, artist books are very new to me. And like I said, I am very slow. So I'm still ruminating on like where I want to go with artist books. I really did like the butterfly wing book. I'll probably go explore that as well. Um, but it's something that I'm just ruminating on right now. It took me a long time to come up with a concept for this piece. I was really inspired by it being more of a kind of playing off of the star piñata being religious teaching. Like I wanted it to be historical teaching, um, just what we know of the piñata today. I mean, there's not much study, like academic studying of the piñata's history. So all of this is just it's just stories right now. I don't know if if will end up being the true history of the piñata. My guess is they're gonna find that there are already things that exist in every culture that are like a piñata. I mean, I think about even in England, like the little crackers at the holidays, like with your own, like it's your own little individual piñata. So I think it's almost akin, almost in my opinion, to a present. But yeah, I'm still thinking about that. If anything, this project has just really got me thinking.
Does anyone else have questions? I think Cole's going to come around with a microphone.
Thank you for that. My question is, when you were talking about, I think you were referring to your illuminated hybrid piñatas,
Uh-huh.
the top and the bottom. Are you talking about, so you said one part is piñata and one part is illuminated, manuscript inspired. And I'm seeing that as a differentiation of the fringe, maybe, but maybe also the structure. And I wondered if you could explain that a little bit.
It is that. Like, what kind of spurred it is I got tired of people telling me that what I made was not piñata. So I really decided to like put it in their face. Like, this is a piñata head. So it is about, yeah, you're right. Like I would say my signature fringe is serrated, like the banner like. So when I make a more traditional piñata piece, sometimes it's blunted. It's sometimes serrated, but it's blunted at the end to make it seem more just like a typical piñata you would see at a party. So it's about combining those two. So you're right, yes, for sure. It's different fringe technique.
So my question, and I don't know if this is the illuminated versus the more traditional piñatas, but some of the creatures have mouths and others don't, and I'm
Oh.
wondering if that's significant.
I'm trying to. I'm gonna flip
Like
through.
the creature
Let's-
that goes with the creature that goes with the passport does not have a mouth.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So that's true. Well, let's just go to that so you can see. You're right. Yeah. And I think that has to do with just the rudimentary nature of piñatas, of contemporary piñatas. I don't think they always have every feature. And whenever I do go the route of pulling in more contemporary traditional piñata motifs, I do reference actual piñatas, and they usually just have eyes. Or at least the ones that I pulled up did. But yeah, no significance apart from that, unfortunately.
Hello.
Hi.
I heard you twice mention candy in terms of piñatas typically are filled with candy, but
Yeah.
beyond that,
Mm-hmm.
if a piñata is typically something that's filled with something, were you interested in exploring the internal aspect or just the external, like the fringing and
Yeah.
those techniques?
I do consider myself a sculptor, so that's my focus. I didn't really anticipate people thinking about what was inside. And once I started making my Bosch piñatas and hearing people talk about what they think was inside, like I could never top it. So I do put things inside, but I don't talk about what it is. Like sometimes it's just to make noise. Like when you move my pieces, they usually make a noise. But I usually don't talk about what's inside. It is a way for me to incorporate things into my piece that are more personal that I maybe don't want to share. Like I can put anything inside. Nobody would know unless you X-rayed it.
I wasn't really referring to things inside.
Okay.
Just that you also referenced mixed race and being gay, and so any kind of internalized feelings.
Right.
There seems a lot that could be explored on
Sure.
the inside.
And I think if I did that, I probably would just keep it to myself.
Okay, thank you.
In your birder and other birds, I
Mhm.
noticed some of them, or maybe all of them, were wearing bands.
Oh, right.
And yeah,
I'm glad
tell
you
us
noticed
about
that.
that. Is that a signature? Or is it
It
something
is,
else?
yeah. So I looked up what is usually on. So first of all, like it was a way that I thought, oh, because I don't normally sign my pieces. There's not really a place, always a place necessarily where I can sign it. So when I thought about the band, I thought, oh, it's a way I can put a signature on these. But I also looked up the what's usually on a band, which is usually the person that caught it, where, and when. So I put my signature, but also where I made it and the year that I made it.
Roberto, thank you so much for being here. I have to say that when you talked about the noise that could be made inside, we handled these things so carefully. When we were told that Cynthia was having all these babies in her 80s, it was like, oh my gosh, we just carry them so carefully inside, but maybe we'll have to rattle it up, towards the end of that.
Yeah, sometimes the things inside stick, and they don't make noise. You really do have, but not everything has something that makes a noise.
Well,
But
these are miracle babies for sure. I'm curious, as a gay man, you've talked a lot about being gay and mixed race.
mhm.
Where's your family on this? Did you have support? Is there alignment? I mean,
Well, my brother likes to say that if I came out when I was younger, he would have supported me, but he would not have. I think they're supportive now to a certain degree. They don't really have a reaction to it. But when I did come out, they all were like, "No, you're not." After a lifetime of teasing that I was gay. I actually read that there's this theory that there's a feeling that people close to people that are in the closet have, that it's their job to keep them in the closet, and part of that is teasing. So I think me coming out, or the theory is that coming out, they can reject it because they feel like they failed. Um, so when I came out, everybody that teased me about being gay was like, "No, you're not gay." But they're fairly supportive now. I mean, we're not a very close family, but yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any issues there. But being mixed race, I think we all have our own takes on it. Like my older brother, he identifies as Mexican only. Um, and that's what I mean. Like people usually pick a side, and they expect you to as well, or to code switch when you're around. But I feel like I was in the closet so long, like I feel like I don't want to hide any part of me or like deny any part of me. So like I'm everything all the time. And if I do code switch, it's probably the opposite. Like if I'm in a group that's white, I'll probably push the Mexican side. Um, yeah. Yeah, we broken some open. There was my first solo museum show was a huge Bosch bird, and the reason I'm okay with breaking these open is they're early pieces where I was using party streamers and newspaper, very volatile material, so it's not really going to last very long. I've since switched. I rationalized switching from party streamers to this fine art crepe paper that's made in Italy because it kind of touches back on that history and pulls that in. But I have this series of songbirds that I made early on, about 7 songbirds, and I've broken open one. So the idea is every time I have a solo show, I'll break one of those birds open. And people always go crazy about it. Like they don't want it broken. They're offering me money. And there's something nice about that. But when I first started this, going down this road, I did have the idea that I would make piñatas that were meant to be broken. And it was to incite FOMO, fear of missing out. Like, I wanted it to be an experience at a museum that you had to be there to experience. Otherwise, you just wouldn't. So the only thing that would exist is the experience and the story of it. But yeah, I just let so much time goes into these. I just didn't go down that route. But I'm fine with busting open my earlier pieces that are more volatile materials, for sure.
Hold on once. Could you
About the crepe.
Mike?
could I have you repeat that?
I'm sorry. Could you talk a little bit more about the paper that you use? Is it all from Italy, or is
It is. All the crepe paper I use is from Italy, and I actually visited that company that makes it this summer, which is really nice. But, you know, the paper I use for paper mache, I no longer use newspaper. I use regular printer paper as long as it's acid-free, lignin-free. I just try to use materials that will last as long as they can. But, you know, the crepe paper that I use, there's metallic crepe paper, there's different weights of paper, but I usually just use the thickest because I think they'll last the longest. Sometimes I do use the thinnest they have because it's the most saturated color, and it, for whatever reason, retains its color longer. So I may use that as like an under color, but not necessarily the top color. And more for durability. Because I really like the reason why I use this serrated cut is piñatas, usually it's just a straight cut where you're not cutting any paper away, you're just cutting up your paper. And it flails a lot, and that really bothered me. I really wanted to control the paper. So this serrated really lays flat, and it's not really affected by anything other than physical manipulation.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you all for coming.
There's a
Oh,
couple-
okay.
yeah, there's a couple
Okay.
more. Not yet. Wait for the microphone, please. Thank you.
I'm just curious about, do you individually put those little pieces, how do you put them on, with a tweezer or with your finger? Because they're sticky at that point, right? Because you have
Yeah.
that glue.
Yeah, I just use my hand.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
use any tool.
Yeah.
I just have a better feel. You know, over time, I just have a good feel for it.
Yeah, and you can do it quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, like that, instead of trying to pick it up with a tweezer or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes fairly quickly.
Yeah. And do you still use wheat? Was it wheat glue or?
No, I
Oh.
actually I've switched to a bookbinding glue, a PVA glue,
Oh, okay.
from Lineco. Again, just going with that more durable pH balance
Sure.
approach.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I just water it down a bit for the paper mache portion, and just keep it straight for the gluing portion.
When you were just talking about how you really like to have the pieces lay flat, and you were talking about not having movement, it did make me have a vision of one of your pieces really having some flow with some fan action or whatever, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, I will probably go down that road. But again, like, I don't know why, I just want so much control.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes we don't have that much control in life, and there you have
Right,
it,
yeah.
right?
At least I can have it with paper.
And one comment I have is I was in Mexico one time and I saw people dressed up as piñatas. I had never seen that before. That was my first visit. And I just was like, the exuberance of them. And when I saw your little mini piñata with a passport, I was just thought, wow, what a cool thing.
Yeah, well, thank you.
I was really excited when Craft in America featured you in a video, and we saw some other piñata makers doing different kinds of things. And I'm just a little curious to hear like what you see that inspires you, what other piñata makers are doing or other artists. And like, what is this field of piñata making like that's sculpture as opposed
Yeah.
to candy bombs?
Yeah, I can't say I necessarily pay attention to other piñata makers. Like, I kind of have my vision and just go down it. But I'm very excited that there are so many working in this medium. When we had the show at Craft in America, I was surprised that they were able to find 15 which, that's just who they found. I'm sure there are a lot more. And they restricted themselves to the West Coast, I believe. I was only aware of a few people working in the medium. And everybody's working in different ways, which is pretty exciting. Like there's Justin Favela. He's like more large scale installation, very flaily. And then there are others just taking their own approaches to it. Some of them are even more commercial with it, but at the same time, they're doing events at museums. So I really feel like the fine art world is opening up to this as a medium, and it's just nice to be a part of it. I wish I could say that I was part of that community, but I'm pretty much a loner. Like, I never leave the house. I just work on this stuff. It works for me.
How long would it take you to make a piñata like the sculpture there?
The smaller ones, I'm not sure. The only one that I've timed, and it's just because I was in a crunch, and it was just, I didn't really time it. I just worked from 6 in the morning to midnight for like days. And it was just the fringing part. Just the fringing part took 130 hours. And I did that in a week. I won't do that again. I used to be able to do that all the time, but now it kills me.
Thank you so much, Roberto.
Well, thank everybody for coming.